The project we are about to present is more about the situation, the housing situation in Hamburg. And I will start the little text that I have here with so-called Article 1 Basic Law for the Federal Republic of Germany. And it says, the dignity of human being is sacrosanct, to respect and to protect it shall be the duty of all state authority. Marginalization and exclusionary policy is always a part of Hamburg history, yes. Even if the southern future in official rhetoric. In the past as well, authority used urban planning to displace and disperse the city poor, trying to make poverty and destitution invisible to the eyes of the world of Hamburger by moving them into a remote district, further away from the heart of trade, business and finance in the center of town. Business and growth simply require a suitable environment, social peace, work, order, and discipline for perpetual growth. Nowadays, the accelerating gentrification process in the city continues to fulfill the same function, a process of displacement and depossession, which allow for the capital investment, surplus value, absorption, and accumulation through urban redevelopment and circle of recreative destruction. In the other major municipalities, the way to achieve this in Hamburg has often implied a strengthening of state authority and the enforcement of new practice of discipline, control, and surveillance over a group of people considered to be continuous and potentially threatening to the state court. Historically, target groups include the working poor, the unemployed, and the city indigent. Laws, regulation, and control contributed to the discipline of the poor, to prevent dissent and uprising, and to physically remove unwelcome social groups from the city quarters. This is just a brief introduction about the history of the Hamburg. Hamburg has already been a city that even before the issue of the refugee and immigrant, the system and the authority and the history are always trying to marginalize the poor people, to try to move them out of the city. And that is also why we also relate our project to the housing, because it's not also about the issue of refugees. Even though the recent issue and what is going on in Europe really have a significant focus on the refugees and the asylum seeker. But I can also prove to you that there is also some other European citizens that they are also homeless, which is also not their fault, but because of this marginalized system that tried to deviate and also try to separate the rich and from the people. So I start again. Who is missing? Are you a victim? The question, a combination of art and political expression, from member of Silent University Hamburg, Curating Hamburg, and Curating the City in Solidarity and Support of the Parade held in Hamburg, May 28, 2006. Just to mention a few about an heartbeat question, expressions, and slogans used to demonstrate the indelinquency of Hamburg authority toward the inhuman housing during the parade. So that is the parade that we really focus our presentation on. The parade is a significant symbol and a proof that Hamburg authority has enough space for all to live, and in particular refugees who are living in bad conditions. I think as the present, even I still tried to search it yesterday, if I did not make mistake, Hamburg still have like really over 10,000 empty buildings that they are just empty, useless, and doing nothing. Without, and I also don't really understand this. So, and that is the reason why we also set up this project. Like, if there is a lot of housing a lot of empty housing in the city, why will the people still sleeping outside? Why is the refugee, the less German people still sleeping on the street? Even the parade we had, it was ended in the front of a 90,000 square meter empty house that is like a former press building. So what are they doing this? And that is the reason why we also start this project. Yeah. Over 50 initiatives in Hamburg supported the call of the parade that were initiated by the Right to the City movement. Never mind the paper in collaboration with CTC. Schwagenbad Palette, I have problem with German. So, yeah. One of the significant actions at the parade is the erecting of a wooden house in the front of the city hall by the group Lampedusa in Hamburg, using the house as a symbol to remind the city and the authority that the refugees, but also homeless people and people with low income deserve a recognition of the dignified life. So this is what we did. I don't know, maybe there are some of you also already heard about this group Lampedusa in Hamburg, because I'm also part of the group. So this group Lampedusa in Hamburg, they are part also of this project, because this project was supported by 50 initiatives in Hamburg. And they have been in Hamburg for over 3 years. And what they just need is the recognition of their document. They already have Italian document. But for over 3 years, the Senate of Hamburg don't really show any concern about about the poor situation of these 350 groups. And this group also joined the parade, and they tried to erect a wooden house in the front of town hall to show a symbol that everyone, even the group, the all refugees, the poor people in the society, they deserve like a recognized and a respected life, like to really have a dignified housing system. It's okay. Lampedusa in Hamburg movement, which was formed in March 2013 as a direct response to the national and European law. More than 300 refugees coming from Italy challenged the limit to their free movement imposed by the Dublin regulation that seek to prevent them to move, settle down, educate, work, and live in another European country than the one they first arrived. In Hamburg, the group started to gather, organize, and politically motivate their protests. Over 3 years now, the Senate of Hamburg ignores the right of the group and all the refugees to live a respected life. Parallel to the aim, objective, and demand of the Silent University, the project not far-fetched to the political demand of the Lampedusa and the parade. So now I'm switching a little bit to the project of the Silent University. The Silent University in Hamburg is an artistic project by Ahmed Ugo, powered and initiated by Curating Hamburg in 2013. One of the objectives of the project is to reactivate the academic knowledge of the clandestine refugees and the immigrants. I joined the project, I'm talking about myself now. I joined the project from the beginning as an activist from the Lampedusa group. The project has helped me to restructure and somehow balance my academic and political career through various activities like delivering lectures in school, university, and public place, visiting refugees in camp. Yeah, so at this point, I think it's really important to emphasize a little bit about the project of the Silent University. I think we are still going to play the video, but the Silent University is very close to the open school here in normal student. Yeah, but you know, but since we started, I begin to ask myself a question like, why you guys also don't invite these people, you know, because since the beginning of the conference, we have really been talking about neocolonialism, you know, neoliberalism, colonialism. So I was also feel somehow like even the art is a very powerful project, it's a powerful study, but somehow I also see it as sometimes as a kind of project or stream that also try to exclude other people, because when the refugees are here also, you know, I think it's also very good to really try to bring them along in all the activities that we are doing, because I can bear the weakness, even though at the present I have more freedom, you understand, but the freedom also comes from try to open to privilege. The people around me, they open to me, and I also try to embrace the privileges, and the privileges also work to me. Presently, I have like a folk status of the Italian, status of the and German. But this is a privilege, but I think what's really important is what I do with the privilege that I have. And I can really tell you that I have been trying my best to make best of the privilege that I have, because I know what it takes to be undocumented people. I know what it means to really be a refugee. I know what it means, you know, to be in the camp. I know what it takes, you know, to cross the river, you know, to cross the Mediterranean Sea. So I don't deny my identity, because it's a pride and it's also a kind of identity that I can change something, and also a kind of inspiration life that other refugees also, they can live a dignified and a respected life. So I felt a little bit sad if this kind of people, they are in the city and they cannot participate. It's also kind of exclusion system. I'm really sorry to say this, but I think it's also the reality. So,
can I say something?
Okay.
Because there are still, in Zurich, there's still a lot of art money, and there's another way around. There's an inflation of invitation to the autonomous school.
Since 2 years, nearly every second art project tries to invite them, to include them in an artistic project. So there's also maybe the other way around. This was what I have heard talking with members of them.
Yeah, so I just think, because for me, you know, I come from like a very different background, so I think it's also important for me, like if I'm here in a kind of conference, to also see the calibers of people. If they are all of the people with high level of education, always want to maintain that quality, to me, I don't feel okay, and I think it's always good for me to really speak how I really feel in every kind of situation. So, though I once faced an open racist confrontation in one of my public lectures with the Silent University. So, because when the Silent University started, the aim is also to include all the refugees and all people without document, to really reactivate their knowledge, to just start something. We don't really have like a concise project or a plan for the Silent University, but we just start. And I was the first person to give a public lecture at the Silent University. So during this lecture, I also confront a kind of racist, you know, confrontation from two men. So I'm always saying this so that you will not only see the positive side of joining the Silent University, but there is also the negative side of get like a kind of confrontation from the people really try to confront me. You people from Africa, where are you just take blah, 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 which education do you have to stand here? You know, this is like really a racist for a German to just stand up in a kind of public lecture and just approach me in this manner. So the impact of my involvement of the projects are tremendously resulted in questioning Hamburg education and political system. Though education is a basic human right, enshrined in 1989 Convention on the Right of Refugees and in 1951 Refugee Convention. But see now that the right of many refugees to educate is far beyond the reality. Refugees, what is interesting is the way in which the paradigm and segregation toward the refugees continue to reproduce themselves. Parallel to present-day condition, showing similar mechanism of control, exclusion, displacement, and punishment of the subaltern in society. Destitution is still used as a weapon today. For example, in form of a ban of working and mobility rights, that so-called resident flight, that often follow the status of asylum seekers and refugees in Germany, thus creating an artificial social dependency that fuel form of stigmatization and practice of exclusion, well portrayed by option that asylum seekers and refugees are social and economic parasites, living at the expense of the state and German society. I think we know all this. The imagination of the right people, that the refugees, they are here, the immigrants, they are here to steal our work, to steal our society, and blah, 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 something like this. Particularly in time of crisis, conventional discourses describe asylum seeker and refugee as stealing welfare resources, housing, and eventually native job. I'm sorry, I have to take this one again, please. Particularly in time of crisis, conventional discourses describe asylum seeker stealing welfare resources, housing, and eventually native people job. Their existence is made invisible by authorities, which usually confine them in remote and prison-like environment where people cease to have normal life and their existence does not disturb the rest of society. Asylum seekers and refugees claim for the right have been systematically ignored and purposely obstructed by the institution power and dominant elites, whose involvement facilitates not coercive form of consent and silent submission to the rules and regulations, when the state authority have difficulty to act directly on subjects. So, this is almost the end, and I think what's really important to me about this parade is also to really show, I think everything about the refugee, I don't really have to say it, and about the asylum, you already know it, we read it every day. But what's really important about this is how these things, the problem are always reproducing themselves. And sometimes I also don't have the answer. I also don't think that you also don't have the answer neither. The parade for all of us, the parade was for all of us, a kind of a new form of collaboration throughout all city as form of production of solidarity. The last word. As a friend has put it very recent, when if a time I feel I am only one or against everyone else, I always know it's never about me or about my ideas. It is always about how we get together with our differences or because of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abimbola. Thank you very much for bringing your experience to this gathering and really giving us that first-hand form of witness and contextualization. This format is going to be slightly different from the previous ones. So Sophie and Alice will speak, but later on in the conversation we'd like to open it out now to Beijing and to Zheng if they would like to respond as part of the first stage of respondent, if there are any comments, and then to the commentators. We have 1 hour, we have less than 1 hour now, we have 40 minutes, and then I'll bring Sophie and Alice back in. So are there any comments from Beijing, or perhaps from Zheng as the first respondent, if he would like to? I can't see where anyone is. Yeah. Oh, there we are. Zheng, perhaps if you have thoughts you might want to share?
Thank you for the very emotional presentation and also very courageous project. I think it goes to the earlier comment of the Beijing discussion we had, when the St. Petersburg group said if they were pissed off, they would just drill at the church, right? That's not possible in Juanqi's film, at least. So, when I look at the pictures and the way you talk, it's also very powerful, very explicit, very what's the English word? It's up to your face, right? So, but you also talk about the difference, the nuance, the complexity of the difference of the issues. I mean, one thing I wanted to think about, but maybe would love to learn more from you, is this idea of simplicity versus complexity. I mean, in contemporary discourse, we have been trained to become very sophisticated. We want to talk about very complex issues, but in terms of social mobilizing, if you don't have a very strong, simple message, it's very difficult to be effective. So this dialectic is, I think, something very important for the discussion. I'd love to learn more from you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. If I really get what you said. So I think your question is really like the method for the mobilizing, right? Yeah. So I think it's also a very problematic situation even in Hamburg to mobilize. But I think in Hamburg, somehow we are also somehow fortunate because there is also like a kind of political structure on ground already that a lot of initiatives are really highly motivated to work with people and to support the refugees. And I think in Hamburg, this is the advantage that we also have in Hamburg. So that is another part. But another part is how the less privileged, the victim themselves could also mobilize themselves. This is also one of the major problems that we also face in Hamburg. And this is totally understandable. In the case of the group Lampedusa in Hamburg, that I'm also one of their speakers, for over 3 years, the group, they were there, and nothing really improved about their life. In 2013, there was a powerful demonstration, about 25,000 people in solidarity with the Lampedusa in Hamburg. And their main demand is a group recognition. That is paragraph 23, like to really give them the chance to work. Because the group, they already have the asylum in Italy. But the Italian, they throw us out and we just scatter all over Europe, you understand? And the few people that eventually landed in Hamburg, we mobilize ourselves and we're like, no, this cannot continue. We need a working permit. We have to start our life. So and one thing that is also important is like, we also need to know that the refugees and the asylum seekers, we always like to get like a very quick solution to our problem. We are not like the Europeans that they already have some privileges. They can wait for the revolution in the next 20 years. But the refugees and the asylum seekers, they cannot wait for the revolution that will come in the next 20 years. We are waiting for the immediate, to support our life, to live at least a dignified life. So this also has really oppressed people. When the people don't have the access to work, when they don't have the access to support their life, when there is no hope, I think it's highly understandable that these people might not politically active. And one of the reasons why the advantage that the Lampedusa in Hamburg we also had is like, you know, the Lampedusa in Hamburg, we have this advantage because when we arrive in Hamburg, we see the prospect that when we are politically engaged, there is a possibility for us to get a group. And that is the reason why majority of the people are really politically active. But most of the people are not really have a political background. Like me, that already, before I left my country, I'm already a juniorist. So there is different. So you can see that when the people don't really get a solution to continue to live a normal life, you know, they were depressed. So they just find like individual way to continue their life. And the people, and also, you know, for all people like me, it's also like us, it's also a privilege because I'm active, I'm politically motivated. It also gives me a lot of privilege also to get the right to stay here, you understand? And so, because of this unbalanced situation, it's also difficult for the asylum seeker and the refugees also to mobilize themselves. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Zheng. Please do come back if you would like to, but for now, Nils, thank you.
Two questions. You mentioned the German Grundgesetz. How is it called? Grundgesetz. Yeah. Yeah. What function does it have for you? Can you use that? And how did you hear about it? And how can you work with this? Is one question. Second question is, I understood the word pirate. You used the word pirate. Is it true?
Pirate? Maybe
no, maybe not. Okay. Okay.
So I think because I really also would like to really clear this. Lampedusa in Hamburg, like me myself, since I've been in Germany, I never applied for the asylum because the group, we already got the asylum in Italy and we got recognized. So we have the document to live in Italy. But because of the crisis in Italy, we cannot stay there. And even at a certain point, you know, majority of us, we were chased out of the camp. So for the people who that resident is useful for are the people who are under the German asylum system. But for people like us, it's not really useful. So I only just put it also in solidarity with other refugees, that they also under the asylum system, because this system is like, they give them 6 months working permit. No, not working permit. So, you know, it's a kind of a strategy to show that, oh, we are doing something for the refugees. But when they give them that document, they have the right to work. But in the reality, they cannot get the work. Because in Germany, before you can get the work, they will consider the German face when you go to the Arbeitsamt. That is where you want any place. And they will also try to consider the second citizen, you know, like something like this. So there is no possibilities for this refugee, even though they say there is a working permit, there is no possibility for them to really get work with this working permit. And it's also not a resident, you know, it's just a temporary, I think Dundun definition, in German we call it Dundun. And interpretation, no, if I have to interpret Dundun, that will be the temporary deportation, you know, that is the meaning. So the status does not have any future. Even some of them cannot even move 100 kilometers like I did, like I go everywhere. So you can see that it's just a kind of formulation to really prove that, oh, we give them a working permit, but they cannot use it to work. So that is what I try to analyze in my text.
Thank you very much. I'd like to hear from Alice now, if we could. It'd be great to go to Alice and then a little bit later to Sophie. So Alice, would you like to?
Maybe I start.
Okay, yeah.
maybe I give a little bit, kind of a little introduction to the background of Silent University and the kind of overall project it was involved, to understand also a little bit why we ended up doing a parade. So as I said before, it is part of Stadtkuratoren. I was a so-called city curator, or I've been working as a so-called city curator in Hamburg since 2013. And one of the, if you just click continue. One of the questions I had when I started was exactly the moment when the Lampedusa group was kind of starting their political activities, when it was really around. So, and one of my job was kind of introducing artistic practices which are related to public space. Because the program is over 35 years old, and the idea was kind of to renew it and actualize it. So in a way, the question was, so how to deal with migration in public space? It's there, so how can we relate our project? And it's a long way before we actually, and I would agree with the argument, not fully, but that after the summer of migration, what happened is that actually in the cultural administration, each project which applied for project funds was with refugees. So to tell you a little bit the economy of these projects, which I would say we came a little bit from a different perspective. Maybe we ended up also being part of this economy. I don't know, this could be discussed. But so the idea was to invite Ahmet Ögit, and for those who don't know him, he's a Kurdish artist. He initiated Silent University, I think for the first time in 2011 in London, together with the Tate. And then he created them in other cities as well, like Stockholm, like Amman, like Paris, which is already closed again, and also in Mülheim, and now very recent in Athens, and got lost, Athens. So that was a question. So this was a question. So in a way we started this, and it was very difficult. And I want to say this also a little bit in response, because then I started to find partners, because we don't really have an infrastructure. So what we built is actually an infrastructure through collaborations. So we couldn't find any partner. I mean, we had a lot of ask partners, which you would first-hand ask, these people who work interculturally or something like that. Then we would also need a financial partner, who then told us we should work with intercultural partners, but they all said, it's a very interesting project, but we don't know. So at a certain moment we decided we will first apply for the money and then see where we go with that. So we've applied at a kind of cultural funder, at Kulturfonds, which is not so important at this point. And we found a partner, which is the W3, which is a place for cultural and social projects. In Hamburg-Ottensen, we also found the association Living Together, who kind of supported us with the office and the rent. And so we started the Silent University. And lately I had a discussion with Maria Lind, who is also running the Silent University in Stockholm, and I think she put it in a quite interesting term, which is a term from James Clifford, contact zone. So in a way, what the projects were allowing us is to also bring people together we were not in contact with. Let's be honest. I mean, you're not immediately in contact with refugees. I mean, the Lampedusa group was something also then which kind of very much collaborated with the cultural and political environment of St. Pauli, because I think it's important to understand that it kind of emerged from the moment when the group of refugees had to leave the St. Pauli church. And in this respect, we kind of built up the first generation, and so we could say we already have the third generation of Silent University, as this, of course, is a work under a kind of unstable condition. So it's not that you form a group and then you meet every day, every week you have your job fixed. It's not going to work. So you kind of come also, I think the understanding of time is different, so sometimes people come, sometimes they don't come. So we started and went then, so we had the first lecture with Abimbola, and the group consists of like current asylum seekers, refugees, and also of people who are already so-called integrated migrants who came in their 70s or 80s. And interestingly enough, that those people who work with us are all kind of work in social work. And I think it's kind of a phenomenon which also could be discussed, why this is so. And then, of course, in a way we were confronted with a situation you wouldn't expect after the summer of migration. And you must imagine that like especially in September, October, you would have like at least 25,000 people coming into the city. So that's like a situation, and we said, okay, what can we do? We discussed this in the group, and so what we decided is actually that we kind of, with the group, went into the camps. So again, it was a door opener because you're not allowed to go into the camps, and you're even less allowed to go out of the camp. So we started to go into the camps, we spoke with the social workers in the camp, and we introduced the project to the camp, to people in the camp who were interested. And of course, we worked in the first phase, we worked together with the social workers of the camp. And of course, I mean, just to give you an example, we had a situation where we were talking to 50 Afghanistan men, and Rizvi is like the group, but also me and my colleague Marenka. So this is quite overwhelming. I mean, we had a translation between Farsi and English, because not all people speak English, so we always had to translate. And all of a sudden we ended up in a discussion about if Afghanistan is a secure country of origin or not. So, because by the time this was very much the question for them, if they would have the right to stay or not. Because until now the German government hasn't decided, but the Hamburg government has decided that it's not, and that they have the right to stay. So with this, the question of, and everybody was quite willing to learn German. So what we also made at the end was using the capacity we have to start and to kind of create a German class for them. So I think you wanted to talk about it, didn't it? So that was one thing which happened then over the time, more in relation to what actually was the situation which has changed. So, but still, and now let's maybe to close this kind of is what we said, and I think it's maybe also a way of how we thought about how we present the project here is that we are now in the third year, and we said we're going to change the structure of Silent University. It's time that me and my colleague going into the back, that it's taken over by, let's say, Abimbola is one, and then Daulatzai, who's a Lebanese refugee, take it as a kind of creating it as their own institution and organization, and that we would, of course, further develop it, but not kind of in terms of creating the content. So we found a partner with W3, who's now also willing to create 2 part-time jobs for Silent University. So that's the challenge we have now, so that we are coming from a cultural project, which was funded by cultural funds, now is more becoming an infrastructure. And then also maybe the way it will work will change. So that's maybe, and I thought maybe if you don't know Silent University at all, I would kind of show a little clip where Ahmed Öged, the artist himself, explains it a little bit what it means for him. So.
Universities for asylum seekers and refugees who have academic background and qualification back in their countries, and they travel to Western Europe or States or Western part of the world, and they are not recognized as academicians or as knowledge producers. And in case of asylum seekers especially, that they are not even recognized with their very basic rights, so this knowledge is not being activated for a very long time. And Silent University is an idea to jump over this waiting process and immediately activate those knowledge and give back the position. In 3 different types of institutions, that's the ideal goal of Silent University: cultural institutions and education-oriented institutions and community focus organizations. And these 3 different kind of institutions collaborating together will bring a lot of opportunities and facilities, and we can give back the recognition to all the participants, and we can create this knowledge bank. I think we underestimate the potential of the art context. We totally misunderstand what is art. So we cannot use the real potential of an art space to have a progressive art space. It's not so different than to have a progressive project that try to go beyond that description. That's a major problem. There are thousands of people like that, and we have to reduce that number of people, intellectuals, academicians, completely invisible in the society. And there are academies, huge buildings, huge companies, huge schools, huge universities. They really have to take time to think about that.
دسيكين دولتي ولاتي خواتي دسيكين والناس اللي حنبغي كتوبة خاطئة وعقيدة بخاطرك عقيدة الفجار يمكن
هذا نوع من أنواع الخط الكوفي. النوع الأول النوع الثاني هو الكوفي المغربي أو الكوفي القديم. أول من كتبت المصاحف كتبت بهذا النوع.
Maybe we stop here. These are some examples of what actually happens or could happen in a kind of public lecture. In this case, in original language. Maybe I stop here, or should I say a little bit about the parade? What do you think? Maybe it's
we have 15 minutes, so it'd be great to hear from Alice and the respondents. So do tell us what we need to know, though, Sophie. If there's something else.
Let me just, I'm going to go quickly. Yeah, that's the publication, but that's all. This is the publication. So let's just quickly, something which I would like to show you very quickly, because in my job, it was also a way of kind of analyzing the current situation of public art and the history of public art, and maybe where we came to an end with a certain kind of public art, especially the drop sculpture. So, and then this is just a map where what you could say is that in Hamburg you have 4 major lines of how public art has been happening in the city. One is the social plastic, a term from Beuys, which is very much about socially engaged art, maybe we call it socially failed art. Then we have, which is very kind of a major issue in Germany, is remembering and forgetting, which is the commemorative culture related to World War II and to the Shoah, which kind of also became to an end because now we are witnessing that Germany is a migration society and you can't only speak within the German hegemonic narrative about those things, but also we have Europe post-colonial in the sense of how do we remember the colonial times. And I think this was also a question from our Swiss colleagues. So also maybe just for you to know is that Hamburg is the first city in Germany who decided in the government to deal with the German colonial history through a kind of funded program. And we have the third one, which is art and public space, the classic one. Maybe there's not much what we can do at these times. There's also within the structures a critique, but that's not so important for now. And we have, and Hamburg was always famous for that, urban communication. And our colleague Christoph Schäfer was in Bombay, so where he was speaking about Pulp Fiction. And Pulp Fiction is one of the most, let's say, relevant and became also the quite most famous project within this question of relational aesthetics, but also how to intervene in urban developments. So in a way, but also now the question of participation as a governing tool. So, and in a way it was then to say, yes, we combine the question of what is urban communication with the question of how artists create themselves, artist organization. Just to show a little bit that this comes together within the question of Zheng University and then later on also going into the public and, as Abimbola said, creating these collaborations. Because you have to understand these 50s initiatives are very different. So it's not that they would immediately come to one table. It's not kind of a leftish orientated only group. So there were also people who were liberal, trade unions, etc. So that was just a quick, we don't have time, I know, so we also had kind of, okay, Leute, so here we go. And in May we did a festival, now Alice comes in, where we kind of brought in a question. I mean, it was planned much before, but as history goes fast, In January, there were the rapes and the sexual harassments of women in Cologne, Hamburg, and other German cities. So in a way, we wanted to ask how feminism in public space is related and what are the emergent questions for us. So we invited international artists to work with us in public space in front of the city hall. So we're coming back to the kind of, Abimbola already said that one of the major parts of the parade was to build the house in front of the city hall. So we organized performances in front of the city hall as one part of the festival. So for example, this is a performance by Regina José Galindo, destroying a Mercedes where she sits inside. So that's the others, and here we go. There's Alice.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Sophie, and thanks for your attention and for the invitation. For us to be here is really important to us. And maybe just to give you like a brief overview, when I was asked by Sophie if I would like to do a performance in public space, part of this festival by Stadtkurator and City Curator, it was for me very clear that it would be in the City Hall Center, which is a very central and visible, very highly regulated, secured space, public space. And I think for me, my approach, and this is really this fascination, but also trying to investigate how this control and this regulation is really part of our spaces, and how, in a way, I wanted to use performance as a tool to kind of work through these aesthetics. So maybe we should just look like really briefly into a short documentation clip, and then I'll say a few things about it. But I think it's better to let the work speak, or talk, or hear for itself. Thanks.
Welcome to Softcall. Please hold the line. Thank you for holding. We will connect you as soon as possible. For intelligence, please press 1. For surveillance, please press 2. For reconnaissance, please press 3. Our operating system is in pickup position. Thank you for your patience. Mission ground control and operation. Prepare for mission ground control. Mission ground control and operation. Proceed with interlocking. Reducing intermediate section 1. Prepare for reduction. ROS 2 and ROS 3 approach target. ROS 2 exchange with Leo 1, ROS 3 exchange with Leo 4. ROS 2 and ROS 3 proceed to pre-position. ROS 2 and ROS 3 interlock pre-position. Operation release. Prepare for operation release. ROS 1 and ROS 4 liberate. Operation Revolving Door. Ross 1, check. Ross 1 and Ross 4, approach and interlock. Proceed with Operation Revolving Door. Ross 4, interconnect with Leo 1 and liberate. Ross 1, check. Ross 1, Ross 4, proceed to standby position.
Okay, because we don't have so much time, I'm just going to interrupt here so you get like a brief impression. So, yeah, there were 8 operators who came into the square, and they were all connected via walkie-talkies, so they would hear the announcements by the commander. And I think for me what is really important in this is that it's a female voice, and there's this ambivalence between this this power and control that at the same time is in a way very seductive. And so the audience also had headphones so they could hear this live transaction between the walkie-talkies. And a very important tool are the dog leashes that are in a way functioning as a substitute for other tools or weapons that state control usually will use. And in this situation they created a kind of a structure that would enact and also sort and categorize the space. So slowly but surely the whole space was, became this kind of partitions. And there's an image that you can see here. It's very dark, I'm sorry. Where the operators are kind of, the square is becoming smaller and smaller, and at the end it's only like a really small, almost like a subway kind of space that is left. So in the beginning it's already completely secured, but the distances are very large. It's like 20 meters between 2 leashes. And the connections between the leashes create this kind of algorithm, because in order to deconnect or liberate from the leashes, you need a third operator. So this, in a way, gave its own kind of systematic or logic to how we were able to choreograph the space, which I thought was a really interesting relation also to this question of the human and the machine, and how through these, I don't know how you call it, these helmets that are, the face is concealed, so I could even not tell who was who. Like these are partly friends and colleagues, and it would be really kind of uncanny and frightening not to know who was behind this uniform. So in a way, this uniform also has this kind of representation of power. Is for me really interesting to kind of work through those different associations that open up also to the question of which body is protected and which body is exposed or vulnerable. So kind of playing along these codes that the color usually in Germany is black, but of course this color is maybe also in the desert or in other areas, but it's kind of this camouflage. So I don't know, I could talk about this longer, I guess, but maybe we can open the discussion. I don't know if we still have time for this.
We don't have discussion. We have 2 minutes now, so
Okay.
we're just going to ask for observations if Anila and Uzma would like to observe rather than sort of offer questions perhaps, or questions into the air, and then we will have to stop. And we will take it forward in the larger conversation. But thank you so much, all of you. Anila?
I'm not sure what to do with 2 minutes. I think it's a wonderful project. That goes without saying. Abimbola, thank you so much for sharing your role in crafting and creating these spaces for refugees that have come to Hamburg. Now, just a quick observation, and I hope to pick this up maybe in the closing discussion, is I really liked, Abimbola, how you talked about this simultaneous, the lives that refugees have to live in terms of the simultaneously falling and performing the victim. So you get access to material and other resources, but then the acts of resistance that they take on throughout their everyday practices, right? So this simultaneously living and inhabiting the victim narrative as it suits, the liberal German state's idea of humanitarianism, but then at the same time you enact practices of resistance in your everyday spaces and make room for others. So I wanted to just sort of note that, and maybe we can bring that up in final discussions about what that means as a group, is how we understand the subjectivities that people that come from these different places around the world that have become destabilized by global capital and racist violence, to understand how these subjectivities are formed and simultaneously have to inhabit the sort of liberal humanitarian logic. He has to perform to be the grateful recipient of the German government. He can't look angry. He has to look graceful, right? And how are these ways that I have had to train over decades of Gans to look and perform like they're grateful for the humanitarianism that is enacted upon them, right? So I hope to pick this up in discussions, but thank you so much.